I love this idea of being thrust into a job, into a profession, head first, not really knowing what it is that you're going to do, but you have to pull it off anyway. If someone were going to be forced into acting, into Hollywood, what is the aspect of your job that would be the hardest for them to be able to pull off?
Oh my God, it's a lot. Working.
Working. What do you mean?
Finding the work. We have a 95% unemployment rate. Less than 1% of the actors out there make 50 grand a year or more.
Wow.
So you're gonna have a hard time finding work. And it's the finding the work that can be spiritually, emotionally, it can decimate you. And I think everyone who wants to be an actor, and there's so many people want to be, they forget that.
So it's easier just to be a thief, really. That's, I mean, that probably more employment rates.
I don't know. I've had a lot of people over the years, kids, I want to say kids, younger people, who will ask me, you know, what it's like to be an actor. I want to become an actor. And I always ask them, what would you do if you couldn't act? And if they say, I want to be a carpenter or a school teacher or something, then I'll say, that's what you should do.
Yeah.
The answer you want to hear is, I would crawl up and die if I can't get a chance to act. That's the answer you want.
I like that.
That's a hard life.
It is.
That's
And
hard.
not everyone
Good life,
gets
but it's a
to
hard life.
sit in those chairs. But you know, you guys earned that. You earned that.
Yeah.
You fought to be there. No one handed that to you.
And a wee bit of luck on my side,
Yes,
certainly.
yes.
You need that
Definite
too.
luck.
For sure, for sure. You have a great moment in the film, and it's in the trailer, and it's being shown in the TV spots, where you say, no one thinks we have the balls to pull this off. I love that idea of really having the guts to do something. You guys have both played roles that I think require a lot of courage, a lot of guts, for lack of a better phrase, a lot of balls. What is the performance, the role that required, for lack of a better phrase, the most balls in order to take on and to pull off?
Well, for me, it was a film called Michael Collins, who was an Irish revolutionary.
Of course.
That was a big leap for me, because myself, I'm the opposite of what that character was, you know? Exact opposite.
It's an amazing performance, by the way.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mr.
For me, it's my television show, Annalise Keating in How to Get Away with Murder. She is both brash and strong and intelligent, but she's also just highly emotional, damaged, traumatic. The love scenes, the sexual exploration of her character, the mess of her character, she's a vast paradox.
And the scene of you in front of the mirror wiping off the makeup is, I think, one of the best of your career.
Oh,
it's fantastic.
thank you.
And as we wrap up, so much of this movie is about subverting expectations and being able to do something that no one thinks you can do. What's the thing in your career that you've done, in your life really, that you most surprised people, where you subverted expectations?
Well, I have to tell you, about 2 weeks ago, I was fly fishing in Montana, which is my passion. I am a competent fly fisherman. Competent. I'm not good, I'm competent. I was there for 4.5 days. The first 2 days, I wanted to break the rods. I just couldn't get past getting stuck on leaves and stuff like that. And I'm saying this dead seriously. But there was a life lesson in getting through it. And then by day 3, just things started to fall in place. And it was then I was able to catch fish and release them too, which is what I do.
I love that.
So there was a life lesson there for me.
It's metaphorical. I love that.
I got nothing. I really do. I have my marriage. That's what's totally, I think people thought I was going to live a life completely by myself, isolated. And my marriage has been the biggest lesson in me discovering who I am, what I'm made of. That's all I
Lovely.
Good to see you guys.
What's going on?
You know, watching this movie last night sort of reminded me that a lesser writer, a lesser filmmaker would have made a movie about the husbands and just made it about the heist and them stealing from you. And then I'm watching this, I'm like, I'm so glad it's about who it's about, because the wives are so much more interesting than the husbands are. Who is a male cinematic character that you'd like to meet the wife of and sort of see who that is?
I would like to know who, what movie was I just watching the other day that I was like, ooh, I wonder exactly like who the wife of, oh, it was American Psycho. I was like,
Patrick
Bateman's wife,
yes.
if she makes it. Like, I was like,
wow.
what if he decided to throw away the life of serial killing and settle down? I'm like, well, who is the woman that's going to tame that
Right,
beast?
right. I was, you know, and it's so strange because I just did a film with him. I watched what is it now? I would like to know if the dude ever got married, who that woman would be. Like who?
Oh, from Big Lebowski.
Big Lebowski.
Big
Oh,
Lebowski.
yes.
Right? Like,
It's just like they just go bowling every Sunday,
right,
and that's
who would
their.
that woman be? What is
Yes.
she doing when they're at bowling? What is she, like, is he still bowling because, or now has he given it up because he's with her? Like, who is that woman?
And John Goodman's trying to tell her all about Vietnam.
Yeah.
And making the
Who is
white
that
Russians
woman?
and everything.
Or even like James Bond's wife.
Like, who would that
yes.
woman be?
Especially like she's got to be a real woman.
has to
she was
be
like,
like
you were
a-
in a movie called Octopussy? Oh, you were? You were?
Really?
You were gone for a few months.
What have you been doing?
Yeah.
Let's look at that
I reckon
submarine
that she would
car.
be more badass than he.
Oh, clearly.
I think so.
Clearly she would.
Who are all these missed calls,
What
these
is
women
this?
on your
What is
phone?
this?
That
And
is
why
hilarious.
are their
I need to meet
names
them
all
all.
sexual euphemisms?
Yeah, what is that about, sir?
That makes no sense.
No, that wasn't in the vowels.
I love the characters you play. They're so fleshed out and for lack of a better word, so badass. And I'm curious, whenever you guys play a role like that, the impact it has on your psyche. When they call cut at the end of the day and you're walking down the streets of Chicago, do you walk with a little bit more of a pep in your step feeling like that? Does it carry over
I'm
a
gonna
little
have
bit?
to say that I definitely did because like where I was filming, all my campaign posters were plastered across
Yes.
the street, and I was like, oh, that's all right, that's cool, right? Team Manning now, man. Like it's really funny because I got to keep some of my like political swag and like. I gave Daniel, Daniel Kaluuya, who plays my brother in the movie, I gave him one of the T-shirts that had my face on it.
Wow.
And he was like, yeah, we wear it. We wear it around the
You
house.
confused our political reporter because he came back. He goes, "I don't know. Like there are these posters splattered."
Yeah,
I don't know.
I heard a couple of the aldermen got shook. You should be. I might be running. Yeah, nah.
Yeah,
it was
no,
cool.
I definitely, because it was the first for me. This is my first movie, so being able to play a woman that just had all the physical capabilities and that I was able to show because it was me being able to do that stuff myself, that was really cool to like, you know, finish the end of the day and be like, yeah, we did that.
Yeah,
I did
busting
that.
out
That was
windows,
cool.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I left her at cut.
You're like, listen,
a rough
Linda,
one
That's
for me.
enough.
Linda,
Yeah.
listen, I'm done.
I'm not bringing you home,
I
honey.
hear that, man.
I gotta get used to you.
Mr. McQueen, good to see you, sir.
Hey.
Obviously, you do so much with story and character development just over the course of 2 hours, but the film at some point was a British television series. You get, you know, multiple episodes, you get a season to sort of expand over a lot of different storylines. If you had had this cast and the time to take this story and stretch it over the course of a season, over the course of maybe, let's say, 8-10 episodes, what's maybe the character or the storyline or maybe in a completely different plot that you would have liked to have maybe expanded upon a little bit?
Well, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in craft. I'm interested in filmmaking as a craft. And I think 2 hours plus isn't more than enough time to tell this story. You know, again, when you think of movies like The Godfather, when you think of things like Chinatown, there's all manner of sort of intrigue and political sort of gazing, as well as the through line of the story. And I think that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a movie which was about craft, going back to telling a story. You know, you get two people you know, telling you a story. One is like, the other one is like, wow. So it's about storytelling. It's about craft.
Right, so it has nothing to do with the amount of time you have to tell that story.
Well, I think often is the case that with TV shows that, you know, which are young, they just tell you. I mean, you know, sometimes you'll say, okay, tell me the story already.
Yeah.
Again, it's about that. For me, it's about a roller coaster ride. It's for me, it's about a knockout rather than a 12-round sort of boxing match. Which is more exciting? I think a knockout.
Absolutely. As a Chicago guy, it was amazing to see not just a movie set in Chicago or a movie filmed in Chicago, which we get quite a bit, but almost have Chicago be genuinely a character in and of itself in the film. What did this city give you as a storyteller that maybe other cities wouldn't have been able to provide?
But I think the racial divide is huge. I think the political situation here, you know, policing, as we've seen unfortunately recently, the economic situation. Again, there's all these sort of dynamics which are sort of about, which I mean, what's interesting is also geography. Within 15 minutes from here, you could have been the most poorest part of the United States, and vice versa. You could be the most richest part of the United States. So, I mean, it's taking that sort of how can I say that narrative and steeping it in the reality of Chicago of now.
It was funny, at the screening last night, I felt like you could tell based on certain reactions to certain lines who was from Chicago. There's a line where they reference nepotism and they say, it's Chicago, it comes with it. And you could hear certain people go, which is, I felt like I was like, you're from Chicago and you're from Chicago. Have you gotten interesting reactions from Chicagoans about certain aspects of the film?
Yeah, but I think what's interesting about that Chicago thing in nepotism is not just, unfortunately, it's not just about Chicago. That sort of goes, any country from you could think of around the world. That's nepotism is very, very alive and kicking. Thank you very much. So again, it's about taking Chicago and putting it on a microscope, but turning it around and making a telescope, because it is local, but it's actually global.
Very true. One of the things I most love about your filmography is that all of your films are so different in terms of tone, in terms of subject, in terms of topic, but I'm curious about lessons that carry over from one film to another. I'm curious, was there something from 12 Years a Slave, a lesson you learned that you used on Widows, and what's something that you used on Widows that you might use on your next film?
Story.
Story.
It's about the story. From each individual, if it's Hunger, Shame, 12 Years, or Widows, it's about story. So it doesn't matter how diverse it seems or how sort of different each project seems. It's just because they're about stories. I mean, when you were a child with your teacher reading, you opened the book and reading you a story, it took you somewhere. Yeah. So again, it's not about genre, it's about story.
Yeah. Well, as a movie fan, thank you for telling great stories. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to sit across from you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Cheers.
So I want to talk about one of the, I think, is the most amazing things about your writing, which is making the setting a character. Not just with Chicago and Widows, which obviously it absolutely is, but the suburbs with Gone Girl and sort of that small town way of life with Sharp Objects. Can you talk about where that begins in your process? Do you start with the setting and then go from there, or does it just sort of evolve into a character on its own?
Yeah, in this case it did, because Steve, when he and I were very first talking, said, I want to do Widows. It's a remake of a miniseries, and I want to move it from London to Chicago.
Yeah.
And so, it very much was like, okay, what do we have to work with? Not just what does Chicago look like and feel like, which was going to be really important, but what does that do to characters we're going to create, characters we're going to update? What does, I said, this is perfect for our story that we're going to tell, and so he and I spent a lot of time just, driving around Chicago so that he could get a real feel of what Chicago looked like. We did a lot of time talking to people from every aspect of Chicago so that, if we wanted it to feel like a Chicago movie.
It's funny because I felt like I told Steve this during the screening last night. There were moments where you could tell who in the theater was from Chicago. I think there was a line about nepotism, and they're like, "What, Chicago?" And certain people went, "Ah," and I was like, "Yeah, that's very true." You have written some of the most incredible female characters of probably of all time, let's say. And I'm curious if you were to, in theory, put some of your favorites that you've written in a room together, and they were sort of to pair off and start having conversations. Who are the two that you'd like to see pair up and you just eavesdrop and hear what they have to say to each other?
Oh, well, I'd love to see Amy from Gone Girl talking to Viola Davis's Veronica.
What would that conversation be like?
I would love to see them try to figure each other out, and they're two very formidable women in very different ways. But I don't know that Veronica is an easy person to outwit.
Right.
So
they have the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Could we get the Flynn Cinematic Universe and just start having characters like crossover?
Universe.
Or even like Stephen King has his characters crossover.
Yeah, that's true.
I would love to see that. You have obviously adapted your own work from the page to the script. Obviously, you're doing it with someone else's work in this case. Are the processes different? Do you adapt your work differently than you adapt the work of someone else?
I don't. I always start with, I look at it one time. I take notes. I get the real DNA of what exactly it is, and then I really don't look at it again. And that goes with stuff I've written or whether it's someone else's new, because it has to become its own new thing.
Yeah, but there's never a moment where you're like, I really need to open my book again, but I'm not going to. So you stick to the rule.
I think so. Every once in a while, if there's a particular line I know I like and I just can't get it exactly, maybe, but otherwise, no.
And as we wrap up, you did mention that this was originally a British miniseries, but I'm still amazed. In 2 hours, you accomplish more than some full-blown TV seasons do. If you had this cast and this story to be able to have for 8 episodes or 10 episodes, is there a character or a storyline that you would have maybe given more time to?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, we had a miniseries on our hands, and we had to kind of
Right.
pare it down. You know, we had the screenplay would get bigger and smaller, but you know, we had to have that discipline to kind of to winnow it down. But you know, the relationship between the widows, it always came down to that. And I would have loved to have just seen you know, Linda at home with her kids and what
Yeah.
that looked like, and
Yeah.
you know, Veronica walking her dog, and there had been some scenes between her and Alice that you know that I would have had more of. You know,
it
you
was-
always want more.
Of course, well, which is what you want. You want to leave always wanting
Yeah.
more. Which I was so glad the Sharp Objects was 8 instead of just a movie because it allowed it to breathe and everything.
decadent.
Yeah, I could talk to you all day. Seriously, thank you so much.
Hey,
Nice to finally meet you.
You too.
Congratulations
Nice to
on
meet you.
everything. Take care.